In this video, we are going to learn how to crochet a gorgeous chunky poncho. This poncho is so quick to make, and as it's worked from the top down, it is completely seamless. So once you're finished crocheting, all you need to do is weave in a few ends. I absolutely love the textured section at the front, and I really think that it adds an extra special feature to this garment. So the pattern is written for both child and adult sizes, all the way from baby up to 5X, and I have linked to both the child and adult patterns below. In this video, I'm going to be making the child size 7 to 8 poncho, but no matter what size you're making, the steps are going to be exactly the same, and the only differences will be in the stitch and row counts. And of course, if you have a second to like this video and subscribe, that would be absolutely amazing. So before we get started, let us take a quick look at the supplies that we are going to need. So you will need a weight 5 or a bulky weight yarn. And for my adult poncho, I used Wonder Fluff from We Crochet, and this was in the colorway Hair Heather. And this is just the most gorgeous blend of baby alpaca, nylon and wool, and it is so soft, and I absolutely loved working with it. Now for the child poncho, I actually didn't have enough of this to make a second one, so I did want to do matching ponchos, but unfortunately I couldn't, so I used another similar weight yarn, and this one is from Hobbii yarn, and it's called Fluffy Day. So this is also a weight 5 bulky weight yarn. And of course, depending on the size that you are making, the yardage will differ. So I have listed all of the yarn requirements below, and they are in the pattern as well. So for the hook, I used a 6mm crochet hook, but if you find that you are not meeting gauge with the 6mm, you can try a different size hook. So if you tend to crochet very tightly, you might find that you need to go up a hook size, or if you crochet very loosely, you might need to go down a hook size. And then the last few little bits that you will need are some stitch markers. So you will need 6 in total, and you'll also need a yarn needle and scissors. So now, without further ado, let's get started. So we are going to begin, as always, with a slip knot, and you don't need to leave a very long tail. And we are going to work a total of 54 foundation double crochet stitches for the size that I am making. So do check the pattern to see how many stitches you need for your size. So we will begin with chain 4, and this chain 3 here will count as 1 stitch. Then a yarn over, insert my hook into the very first chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then chain 1, and that's going to act as the chain at the base of this next stitch. So now we have 2 stitches, the chain 3 and the 1 foundation double crochet. So let's just repeat that a few more times. So we'll yarn over, insert our hook into that extra chain that we made, pull up a loop, do another chain 1, and then finish off the double crochet stitch. And that's it. So we'll just continue repeating that until we have a total of 54 stitches. So that is the chain 3 is 1 stitch, and then 53 of these foundation double crochets. Okay, so I have finished working my foundation stitches, and now I am just going to bring the ends together, and I am going to join them with a slip stitch. So I'm going to join to the top of this chain 3, so remember that counts as 1 stitch. Okay, so there's our join done. Now if you wish at this point, you can use the tail here just to seam these edges together, or you can leave it until later. It honestly doesn't matter, so whatever your preference is. So before we go on to the next round, we need to turn our work. So we'll just flip it around here, and then we are going to mark out the corner stitches. So these corner stitches will vary depending on the size you are making, so do check the pattern to make sure you're marking the correct stitch. So for me, my first stitch is actually going to be the top of this chain 3, so that's quite easy to mark. and the first stitch is the same for everyone. It's going to be the very first corner. Now my next stitch is number 17, so I'm going to count on from there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So that's my next corner. My next one is going to be 28. There we go. And then my final corner is going to be stitch number 44. Okay, so there's number 44. Now, if we just lay it out here like this, these two slightly shorter sections are going to be the shoulders. This is going to be the front, and then this one here where we will have the seam is going to be the back. So it's important that you're looking at the wrong side when you mark out these stitches, because otherwise the corners will be mixed up a little bit and the rest of the pattern won't make sense. So now that we have done that, let's continue on with round number 2. So we'll insert our hook back in here, and we are going to chain 1 and then work 2 single crochets into this first marked stitch, so the top of the chain 3 really. So let's chain 1, and that does not count as a stitch, and then we'll do 2 single crochets in there. And now I'm just going to move my stitch marker up to mark that first single crochet, because that's going to be the start of our round and the corner stitch. Now the rest of the row is very, very easy. I'm just going to continue to single crochet all the way along to the next corner. Okay, so here I am. Now I'm just going to remove my stitch marker, and I am going to work 3 single crochets in this corner stitch. So we're going to turn the corner. Okay, and then I'm going to mark the center of those 3 stitches, and that's going to be our next corner. And the rest of the round we are just going to repeat the exact same pattern. So single crochet to the corner, 3 single crochets in the corner, and so on. Okay, so we are just at the end of the round, and now you might have noticed that at the start of this round we only worked 2 single crochets in the stitch, whereas all the other corners have 3. So what that means is that we need to add 1 more single crochet here at the end of the round, and we're going to do it into the exact same spot, so right in here into the exact same place where we worked the 2 at the start. So let's just work that final one, and then we will just slip stitch to join to the first stitch. So the reason that we do it this way is we want to keep the start of the round as the corner stitch here and keep the seam in that section as well. So that's why we work 2 at the start and then work the third of the corner stitches at the very end. So now we are going to chain 3 and turn our work. So let's just pause for a second, and you can see here now that our circle has kind of become a square, so we have our 4 defined corners here. Now for this round we're also going to be increasing at the corners, so we have done our chain 3, which counts as 1 stitch. So now I'm going to double crochet into that exact same place. Alright, so that's 2 double crochets at the start, and then I am just going to mark that the top of that chain 3 as our first stitch and our first corner also. Now I will double crochet all the way to the next corner. So here I'm working one of the short edges, so this is going to be one of the shoulders. So I have reached the next corner and I am just going to work 3 double crochets to turn this corner, and then again mark the center of those stitches with the marker. Alrighty, so let's have a look at what we have here. So this is the shoulder section, and this next section here is going to be the front of the poncho, which means that this is the section where we will be working our textured double post stitches. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit now and show you how to work those. So before we get to the first double post stitch, I need to work a number of double crochets. Now for the size that I am making, I am going to work 4 here, but the number does vary depending on the size that you are making. So do check the pattern for that. So we have our corner 3 stitches and then 4 more. So let's get straight into the next stitch, which is our double post stitch. Now, looking at the next single crochet here, this is not the stitch that we're going to work into. We're actually going to work into the double crochet immediately below it. So we're going to be working around the post of this double crochet from our foundation row. So let's yarn over, insert our hook around the post of that double crochet 2 rows below, then we'll yarn over and pull up a long loop. And this loop doesn't need to be quite the height of the current row, but it does need to be quite high, so close enough to the current row. Then we will yarn over again, insert our hook around the exact same stitch and pull up another long loop. Then I'm going to yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops on my hook and yarn over and pull through the remaining 2. And that is our first double post stitch worked. So this stitch is basically a front post double crochet 2 together, but instead of working over 2 stitches, you're working around the post of the same stitch for both legs of that double post. So now we are going to skip the single crochet behind the stitch that we just made, and then we will work 3 double crochets. So now it's time for our next double post stitch. So again, we are going to work into the next double crochet 2 rows down. So not this single crochet, the double crochet immediately underneath it. So we will yarn over, insert our hook around the post of that stitch and pull up a long loop, yarn over again and repeat. And now you can see we have our 5 loops on the hook. So we will yarn over, pull through the first 4, then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2. And that is our second double post stitch done. Now, again, skip the next single crochet and then double crochet in the next 3 stitches. And finally, for this row, 1 more double post stitch. So we will yarn over, insert our hook around the next stitch, pull up a long loop, and then complete the stitch. So if we just do a little recap here, we have our front, we have our double post, and then we have 3 double crochets in between that and the next one, and it's the same down here actually. So there's 3 here and 3 here. So if you're unsure about where to position this stitch, you just need to count on 3 from the previous one. Okay, and the same over here. Now, because we started this section with 4 double crochets, we're going to also end with 4 double crochets. So we will skip the single crochet behind the stitch that we just made, and then we should have 4 double crochets left to bring us to the corner. So that is the front section of the poncho done. And now the rest of the round is very, very easy. We are just going to increase in each corner stitch with our 3 double crochets, and then double crochet to the next corner, increase, and so on until we get back to the start. Okay, so here we are at the end of the round, and as with the previous round, we need to work an extra double crochet into this starting stitch just to give us our 3 corner stitches. So that will go into the same stitch as the initial 2. All right, so that is that row done, and we will just join again with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. Okay, so that is our 3rd row complete. Okay, this is the front of the poncho. Now let's get straight into row 4. Now, depending on the size that you are making, this next row is either going to be an even row, which means it has no increases, or it's going to be an increased row. So do check the pattern to make sure that you are working the correct number of stitches. So for this size that I am doing, it is going to be an even row, which means no increases at all. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and then I'm going to single crochet into that same stitch, so the same top of the chain 3. Now, because this is not an increase round, I am just going to mark this first stitch, but I am not going to do a second one. So all I need to do now is just single crochet all the way along. So even though it is not an increase round, I still need to mark my corner stitches as I come to them. So I won't be working 3 stitches in the corner for this round, I'll only be working 1, but I still need to move my marker up to keep track of the corners. Okay, so I'm just back at the start of the round, and now remember, because this is an even round, I don't need to work any extra single crochet. I already have my corner stitch, so all I need to do here is just slip stitch to join, and that is the round done. So let's get straight into the next round. We're just going to chain 3 and turn. And now, again, depending on the size that you are making, this is either going to be an increase round or an even round. So the only difference really is if it's an increase round, you're going to be doing 3 stitches at the corner, and if it's an even round, you're only going to be doing 1. So for the size that I am making, it is an increase round. So I'm going to work another double crochet into the starting stitch to give me my 2. And then, as always, just mark my corner stitch. Okay, so away I go, double crochet to the next corner, and then doing my increase in the corner stitch. Okay, so here I am at the front of the poncho again, so some more textured stitches coming our way. So depending again on the size that you're making, you're going to work a number of double crochets before you work the first double post. So for my size that I'm doing here, I am going to do 3 double crochets. So my next double post stitch is going to be in the next double crochet 2 rows down. And as always, skipping the stitch behind the one we just made, and then we'll do 3 double crochets. And then our next double post stitch. Now from this point on, it actually gets much easier to see where you need to position your stitches. So if we have a look here, we have our 2 post stitches and our 3 double crochets in between, and the next post is going to go into the center one here. So it's much, much easier now to figure out where you need to position the stitch. The only counting required really is at the very start. Okay, so that's the next double post done. Skip this stitch and 3 double crochets. All right, so I'm just going to continue that pattern all the way along until I have 3 stitches left before my corner, because remember I worked 3 stitches at the start, so I want to have 3 left at the end as well. Okay, so that has worked out really, really nicely. And if we just flip it around for a second, you can see this is going to be the start of the textured section, and it's beautiful. I love how it looks already. So I am going to fly along with the rest of this row. It's very easy. We just do our increases in each corner and double crochets in between until we get back to the start. Alrighty, so if you have made it this far, then you know everything that you need to know to complete the rest of the poncho. So the entire pattern is basically just going to be repeating those 2 rows. So we'll be alternating single and double crochet rows and continuing to work our textured stitches here at the front of the poncho. Now, depending on the size that you are making, there are going to be a few more rows to add some extra double post stitches here so that they're kind of sloping outwards. So for the smaller sizes, the child sizes, I need to add 1 more round of increases just here with the double post section. And if you are making the larger sizes, the adult sizes, then you're going to be adding 2 more rounds of increases. So what that means for me is that I need to work 2 more rounds. So I'm going to work another round of single crochet and then another round of double crochet with my extra double posts. And for the larger sizes, you'll be working 4 more rounds, so working up until round 9. So no matter what size you are making, there are 2 main things that you need to pay attention to for the upcoming rounds. So the first thing is you have to check if you are working an increase round or an even round. So if it's an increase round, you will just be adding stitches at each corner, so working 3 stitches in the corner. And if it's an even round, you will be only working 1. And whether it's going to be an increase or an even depends on the size you're making, so do check that. And the second thing that you'll need to pay attention to for the next couple of rounds is how many stitches you need to work on either side of the posts here. So again, that number will vary depending on the size you're making, so do pay attention to that as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead with the round 6 and round 7, and once I have done that, I will have increased my textured section here as wide as it can go, and for the rest of the pattern it's just going to be straight down, so no more adding stitches on either side, and the pattern is going to get a little bit more straightforward after that. And again, remember, if you're making the larger sizes, you're going to be working another 4 rounds until you reach the full width for the textured panel here. So I'm going to go ahead now work my next 2 rounds. So I'm just going to do a single crochet and then my double crochet round, and I will come back into the video to continue on with the main body of the poncho. Alrighty, so I have finished working my next 2 rounds. So I have worked up until round 7. And remember, if you're making the adult sizes, you'll be working this section up until round 9. And you should see a note in the pattern here that tells you to mark these 2 stitches. And the reason for that is that for the subsequent rounds, we're not going to be adding any double post stitches on either side anymore. We're just going to be working them straight down. And if we mark off these stitches, it means that we can really stop counting the stitches between the corners and the double posts, and we can just use the markers as our guide, and it's just going to make the rest of the pattern much easier to follow, because you don't have to keep counting on every row how many stitches are there. So let me just flip this around and I'll mark my double post stitches. like so, and then I'm ready to move on. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and work the next single crochet round, and for the size that I'm making, this is going to be an even round, so no increases. And what I will do is once I come to these 2 marked stitches, I'm just going to move the markers up. So exactly as we do with the corners, once I work the single crochet in this stitch, just put the marker in the same place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm also going to start the next double crochet round, and I will pause here when I come around to the marked stitches to just show you how we're going to count and decide where to place our next double post. And you can probably guess already that they're going to be in between these ones here, but I will just stop and show you that anyway. So let me go ahead now and work my next single crochet round and then begin my next double crochet round. Alrighty, so I have finished my single crochet round and I have also started my next double crochet round. So I've just worked one side here, and for me this is round 9 and it is an even round, so that means I'm not increasing in the corners. So let's just turn around our work here and have a look at how we're going to work this front section. So I have worked up until the corner and I am just going to double crochet there. And I'm not increasing, so I'll just mark that stitch. And now the pattern is going to tell you to double crochet in each stitch until you have worked one after the marked stitch. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I just work my double crochets, and the nice thing with the stitch markers is that you don't need to count your stitches. Just at this point, you just work until one after that marked stitch, and as always, remembering to put that marker back. So the next stitch is going to be our double post, and if everything is going according to plan, then the double post should be going into the center of these 3 double crochets here, which it is. So we'll just work that stitch as normal. And now we are just going to repeat our usual pattern of 3 double crochets followed by a double post, and we're going to stop when we have 1 stitch left before this marked stitch. So we're going to stop before we work into the stitch. So I will just go ahead with that now, working my 3 double crochets and my double post to the next marker. Okay, so now I have 1 stitch left before the marker, so I don't need to repeat that sequence any further. All I need to do now is double crochet to the next corner. And again, just putting my marker back in the correct spot, and off I go. So if you like, it's probably a good idea at this stage to count how many double crochets you have on either side of the marker. So here I have my mark stitch, and then I have 1, 2, 3 stitches, and on this side I have my marker and 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then the corner. So the rest of this row for me is going to be very easy because it's an even row. I just need to double crochet all the way around and then mark my corner stitches. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this round, and I'm also going to work the next single crochet round. And after that, I will just do the same thing as I did for this round, and I will work up until this corner and then stop just to show you how we're going to work using the markers for this next double post round. And you can probably guess what's going to happen. We're going to be working our double post directly above this previous one, so working into the marked stitches. So away I go. I'm going to fly through this round and the next, and then see you back for the next double crochet round. Okay, so here we are back at the front corner again. So I've worked my single crochet row and started my double crochet row. And before I continue, I'm just going to point out that your work is probably not laying flat right now, and that is absolutely fine, because once you fold it over to wear it, it's still going to sit really, really nicely. And it's just not flat because we're not increasing every single round, because if we did that, it would just end up being way, way, way too wide. So that's why we do have to have some even rounds. So if you're wondering about that and wondering if it is okay, then it absolutely is. So let me just turn my work here, and I am at my first corner. And this is an increase round for me, so I'm just going to do my 3 double crochets here to increase. So there we go. And now this next bit I think is pretty intuitive from this point on. So we're just going to double crochet to the first marked stitch here, and then do our double post in the marked stitch 2 rows down. So let's go ahead and do that now. Take out our marker, do our double post stitch. And put the marker back in that one. And now we just continue along the front panel, and we will end with a double post stitch in the next marker. So I think it's pretty straightforward. And from this point onwards, we can just use these markers to decide where our double post stitches are going to be. And the stitches here before the first post are going to change, because we're going to be increasing a little bit wider, and depending on the size you're making, the increases may not be done at exactly the same row or round. So I think the stitch markers are just so helpful here, because number one, they're going to make the pattern a little bit easier to read and a little bit easier to work as well. So I'm just going to fly along here. All right, so I'm at the next marked stitch, and I'm just going to do my next double post. And then just double crochet to the next corner. Okay, so we can just do a little quick sanity check here. So we have 3 double crochets here after this post, and on the other side we have 3 here before our corner stitches, so we are on the right track. So if we just swing this around, you can see now that our pattern is really starting to come together. So for these first 7 rounds we were adding some posts here as we increased, and now we're just going to continue with that pattern straight down. So I am just going to fly along now with the rest of this round. So it's very straightforward. I just do my corners and double crochets, and then I will be ready to get on to the next part of the poncho. Alrighty, so I have just finished off that double crochet round, and now for the next section of the body we are just going to be repeating the 4 rounds that we just worked. So we're going to be alternating our single and double crochet rounds, and then just following the same pattern for the double post stitches here. Now, again, as always, depending on the size that you are making, the number of rounds that you are going to work are going to vary a little bit. And also, if you are making some of the larger child sizes or the adult sizes, there are going to be some more increased rounds. So you do need to keep an eye on the pattern just to make sure that you're working either an increase or an even round correctly, and that you just need to work the right number of rounds for the size that you are making. And once you have worked those repeats, we're going to stop and we're going to create a split for the armholes. So I'm going to continue on now working those repeats, and I am going to end on a single crochet round, and then I will come back into the video to show you how to create the armhole split. So away I go. Alrighty, so I have finished the yoke for my poncho. So the yoke is just the upper section here before you split for the armholes. And for the size that I am making, I have worked a total of 22 rounds. So you will probably have a different number of rounds unless you're making this exact size, and that is absolutely fine. So our next thing now is to create a space here for the arms. So what we're going to do is just fasten off our work so far. So I'll just cut that and leave an end for weaving in later and just pull through. Now at this point we can take out the corner stitch markers. So I'm just going to take those out, and you can keep the two here at the front marking the post section because we're going to use them as our starting point to count out the stitches to the sleeve or the armhole. So let me just flip this around. Now what you want to do, and again this number is going to differ depending on the size that you're making, is count a number of stitches to the right and left here of this front marked section. So for the size that I am making, I need to count 10 stitches to the right and 10 to the left. So we won't count this marked one. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll mark that one and then do exactly the same on the other side. Okay, so what this is going to do is just mark out the width of the front panel here, and then everything else all the way around is going to be the back panel. So let's go right ahead now and start working on the back panel. Alrighty, so we'll just rotate this around so that we are working in the right direction. And I'm just going to take my yarn and join it in here to the stitch right beside the marked one on the left. So we just yarn over and chain 3 because this is going to be a double crochet row. We finished our last section on a single crochet, so this is going to be a very simple double crochet. So the first chain 3 counts as a stitch, so now I'm just going to double crochet in each remaining stitch around, and I'm going to just keep going until I get to the marked stitch on the opposite side. So I will stop right before this marked stitch with the pink marker here. Okay, so I'm going to fly on with that. And that will be the first row of the back section done. Okay, so I'm just at the end of this row, so I'm going to stop here before the marked stitch on the opposite side, and you can just see here that we have just crocheted right past that seam line. So this is where we were starting our rounds when we were working the yoke, so now we've just gone right past that. So the next round is, the next row I should say, is super simple. We're just going to chain 1 and turn, and then we just single crochet all the way along to the other side. So very, very easy. Okay, so I have just come to the end of that single crochet round, and because I started the previous round with the chain 3 and that counted as a stitch, my last single crochet goes into the top of that chain 3. So I'm just going to tie a loose knot there so that doesn't unravel, and I'm going to flip it around. So you can see here that this is going to create the back of the poncho, and it's going to wrap around like this. And we need to work a few more rows. So for the size that I am making, I need to work a total of 10 rows here. But what I'm actually going to do before I finish those is start on the front, just so that you can see how it's going to work, and then I can go and I can do those 2 sections all together before I come back in to finish off the poncho. So let's just flip this around so that we're working in the right direction again. And now I am going to get a new strand of yarn and join it in here for the front. So if you're doing this, it's probably much easier to just finish the back and then continue on with the front. But for the video, I'm just going to start on the front now. So I will join my yarn here into the marked stitch on the right. And again, this is a double crochet row, so I'm going to chain 3 to start, and then I will double crochet along to this first marked stitch. Okay, so depending on how your pattern has fallen for this textured section, and this will depend on the number of rounds you have worked up to this point, you might be working a double post next, or you might be moving on and working your double post 2 stitches after the marked stitch. So for me, my next stitch is going to be a double post, so I will do that. So it doesn't matter what stitch you are working next, but just follow along with the pattern and just keep this textured pattern going. So now you can probably guess what comes next. We're just going to finish off this row as we normally would with our post and then 3 double crochets in between. Alrighty, so that is the first row of the front panel done, and if we just rotate everything around here, a little bit awkward, you'll just be able to see exactly what we're doing. So we're just creating the gap for the armholes there. So all you need to do now is finish off the back panel, so just work whatever number of rows you need to work for the size that you're making, and then also finish off the front panel. And it will be exactly the same stitch pattern as what we have worked up until now. So we'll have our post stitches on double crochet rows and then single crochet rows in between. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work my 10 rows for the back and for the front, and then I will come back into the video to join them up and work the bottom of the poncho. Okay, so here we are. I have finished my front panel and my back panel, so I have it done equal rows for each section, and now I am ready to finish the bottom section of my poncho. So this section is very, very straightforward. We're just going to work a joining round to bring these 2 edges together, and then work a few more even rounds, no increases or decreases or anything complicated, just a few more rounds. So let's flip around here, and what we want to do, so I should say as well, I have fastened off both the front and the back panel, so we're done with both of those. So for the last section of the poncho, I want to have my seam here at the halfway point, so I want to begin my next row right here, and you could continue working from either the front or the back panel, but what it would mean is that you would have a seam line running down here right under one of the sleeves wherever you started the round. And while the seam is not too conspicuous, I just prefer to have it at the side so that it's not really visible at all from the front. So depending on the size you are making, you're just going to need to count a number of stitches to the right here of this back panel. So for me, I need to count to the 5th stitch, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is where I'm going to join in my yarn. So let me just go ahead and do that now, and because we're on a double crochet round, we're going to start with chain 3 as always. So now what I'm going to do is just double crochet to the end of this back panel and then just keep going all the way along the front panel as well. So away we go. So the first chain 3 is always counts as a stitch, and we just double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches for me, and there we go. And now we're just going to keep going. Alrighty. Now, so with that stitch, we have just joined the front and back panels together, and that's our armhole right there. So let's just continue on another little bit. So usually what I do here is I'll work over the tail for a few stitches, and then I'll just leave the rest to weave in later on, because it's just going to be a bit more secure that way. So now I'm at the front section, and this is just going to be worked exactly as normal. We just follow the textured pattern as we have been doing up until now. And again, depending on the size you're making, you might be at a different row of this repeat, but it's fine, just keep going and work with the pattern that you have. Okay, so just going to put my marker back there. And that's it. So we're just going to continue on the round, finish our textured pattern, keep going here with our double crochets, join these 2 up with a double crochet in the first and last stitch on this side, and that's it. So I'm just going to finish that round, and then I will come back into the video just to tell you how to finish off this section. Okay, so I have just finished my double crochet round, and I have just joined to the beginning chain 3 with a slip stitch, and let's just spin it around here for a second. So now I just have a number of rows to work for the bottom section of the poncho, and the pattern is going to be exactly what we're used to. So my next round is going to be a single crochet, and then I will work the number of rows that I need to for the size that I am making. So for this particular size, I have a total of 6 rounds left to work. And just for this section, I want to end on a double crochet round, so not a single crochet. And no matter what size you are making, you are going to want to end on a repeat that has the post stitches here on the outer section. So you don't want to end on this one, you want to end on this one. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and work my final 6 rounds, and then I will come back into the video to show you how to work the trim at the very bottom, how to add a very easy trim to the sleeves, and how to work the trim for the neckline. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, and I will see you back here very, very soon. Okay, so I have finished my last section here, just below the armholes. So I have done an extra 7 rounds in total here, and I have finished on a double crochet round. So now let's just get straight onto the trim. This is very, very easy. So at the end of this double crochet round, you do not turn, so no need to turn your work. We are just going to continue working on the right side now for the trim. So this round is super simple. It's just going to be half double crochet all the way around. So we're going to chain 1 to start, then I will half double crochet in the top of that joining chain 3, so just the same place where we joined with the slip stitch, and then just continue to half double crochet all the way around. Alrighty, so just finished my half double crochet round, so just 2 more to go for the trim for this particular size. So the next round is also going to be half double crochet, but instead of working it in the top 2 loops here like we normally would, we're going to flip over and work into this 3rd loop back here. So because we're working in rounds and not turning, this 3rd loop is at the back of our work. If we were turning in rows, the 3rd loop would be at the front. So this is much easier, I think, actually, than turning. So away we go. We will chain 1 and then yarn over and then just insert my hook into the 3rd loop of that first stitch. Yarn over, insert it into the 3rd loop and just work the half double crochet as normal. So you just want to angle your work a little bit towards you and just find that extra loop. And as you do that, you will see that it pushes the front and back loops, so the regular 2 loops at the top of every stitch, to the front, and it's just going to give us a really nice trim. So that is this round. So I'm going to fly on and finish that one. And for the larger sizes, so the adult sizes, you're going to repeat that another 2 times. So you'll have 3 of these half double crochet rows in the 3rd loop in total. And then the very last round is also going to be worked in the 3rd loop, but it's going to be a round of single crochet. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the entire trim now, actually. So I'm going to work my half double crochet round and then I'll work my single crochet round in the 3rd loop, and that will be the trim done. And then I will see you back here to finish off the neckline. Alrighty, so I finished my trim. I have done my 3 rows here, and I just really like the way that working in that 3rd loop kind of pushes the stitches forward and looks kind of neat. So what I'm going to do now is just add a very quick trim around the armhole, and then I will get on to the neckline. So for the armhole, I'm just going to slip stitch around it, and this is optional really, but I just think it finishes it off really nicely. So what I will do is just join in my yarn down here at the bottom of the armhole. And now I'm just going to slip stitch evenly up the side and down the other side. Let's just move that out of the way now. So this is not an exact science, so just do your best with it. Try and get it as neat as possible. And it's going to make the armhole look really, really nice. Okay, so I am just at the end of my slip stitch round, and I could fit 1 more slip stitch right in here, but I'm actually going to show you a different way to finish off this round and make it pretty much invisible. So I'm actually going to cut my yarn and just pull my tail all the way through and then get a yarn needle. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is take that yarn needle and I'm just going to put it through the 2 loops of the very first slip stitch and pull that through like so. And now what I'm going to do is go through, and I know, I apologize, this is a little bit tricky to see with the yarn. I'm going to go through the last slip stitch that I just made. So it tightened up a bit on me there, but there are the 2 loops, so I'm just going to go into the middle one, okay, from front to back, and pull that through. And now that is going to give me a stitch here. You can see the 2 loops right here that looks exactly like a slip stitch. And if I just pull that really, really gently, it just brings the edges together. Let me just tuck this in here so you can see it. So it just brings the edges together really nicely, and it's going to be a lot less visible than if you joined with a slip stitch. So now all I need to do is just go weave in my end on the inside, and we're done with this round. Alrighty, so that is the trim done on the first armhole, so you just need to repeat that exact same process on the other side. So now let us move up here to the neckline. So we're just going to flip everything around, and for the neckline I'm just going to do the exact same trim as what I did down here on the hem. We're just going to do it on the neckline. So first step is to just join these two edges together if you haven't done that already. So I'll just sort of turn around here so that I'm looking at the inside of the neckline, and I'll just seam quickly with a whip stitch seam. Okay, so before we start the neckline trim, we just need to mark out a few stitches, and basically we're just marking where our corners were at the very start, because we're going to be working some decrease stitches at those corners. So the first stitch that we need to mark is stitch number 1. So it's basically just this chain 3 here where you began all the way back at the very start, and then the stitches are going to differ depending on the size that you're making. So for me, I know the next stitch is going to be stitch number 17, and actually it's quite easy to find it, because if we look here we can see our 3 single crochets in the same stitch, and that's the stitch that we need to mark. Okay, so just go around, mark off all your corners. You can use the numbers in the pattern to make sure that you're marking the correct stitches, and then you should have 4 corners marked when you are done. Alrighty, so that's my 4 corners. So now I am going to join the yarn in at my first corner, but I'm not going to join it into the marked stitch. I'm going to go in to the stitch immediately to the right. So let me just grab my yarn over and pull up a loop. And now I am going to work a half double crochet 3 together, so into this join stitch, the marked stitch and the next stitch, and that is just going to kind of smooth out the neckline and pull it in a little bit as well. So I will chain 1, yarn over, insert my hook into that join stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I can take out my stitch marker. Now for this next leg of the half double crochet 3 together, I'm actually not going to yarn over, because I have found that this makes the stitch quite bulky. So this is kind of a modified half double crochet 3 together really. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that marked stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then insert it into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and now I have 5 loops on the hook, and I'm just going to yarn over and pull through all 5. There we go. Okay, so now all I need to do is continue with a row of half double crochet stitches all the way along to the next corner. So I'm going to work over my tail here for a couple of stitches, and then I will just push it to the side and come back and weave that end in later. And I just like to do that to make sure that it's really secure. Now, so I am just going to pause here, and I have 1 stitch left to work before the next corner stitch. So I'm just going to take out that stitch marker, and now I'm going to do another half double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches. So that's going to smooth out this next corner. And pull through all 3. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on with that same pattern all the way around. I will work half double crochets in all of these stitches, and then at each corner do my half double crochet 3 together until I get back to the start of the round. Alrighty, so I'm just back at the start of the round, so I am going to join to that first half double crochet 3 together with a slip stitch, and now I'm ready to go on to the next round. So this round is going to be very like the trim. We are going to work a round of half double crochets, but work them in the 3rd loop. So working in this loop back here at the back of our work. So I will chain 1 to start, yarn over, insert my hook to that 3rd loop. So it's a little bit awkward to find on the first stitch, but it is there. And now I'll just continue half double crocheting in the 3rd loop all the way around. Alrighty, so I'm just back to the first stitch here, so we will just join with a slip stitch again. So now I really like how that trim is starting to look. So if you are making the adult sizes, I have a total of 5 rounds here for the trim. So that means you will work 2 more half double crochet rounds and then finish with a single crochet round also in the 3rd loop. So just like the bottom trim. And for the child sizes, I have decided to just do 3 rounds in total because I know my kids anyway don't like anything kind of too high up on their neck, but obviously you can do as many rounds as you like. So I have done 2, and my last round is just going to be my single crochet in the 3rd loop. So I will just chain 1, find that 3rd loop at the back, and then single crochet all the way around, and that's all I have to do. So I should say as well actually that if you don't want to do this neckline trim, you can just simply do a round of single crochets and then a round of slip stitches. So don't need to mark any stitches or anything for that first round, just single crochet all the way around the neckline and then finish with a round of slip stitches. And that will give you a lower and slightly looser neckline because you're not working those half double crochet decreases to kind of pull in at the corners. So that's an option too. Okay, so I just finished that round of single crochets and joined at the end of the slip stitch as always. So now all I need to do is weave in this end and go around and weave in all the other little ends that I haven't done yet, and my poncho will be finished. And there we have it, we are all done. I really hope you've enjoyed making this cozy, chunky poncho with me, and if you do have a second to subscribe, that would be absolutely great. And I have lots more tutorials and patterns on my channel and website nedandmimi.com, so do check those out. Happy crocheting and take care.